Okay, Blaine Gray, Plastering for Beginners, and today we're going to talk about a topic that's often asked on my channel. I get loads of comments about it, and what is a perfect mix for rendering? Now, there isn't no perfect clear answer for this because there's lots of variables. What I'm going to talk you through is what materials to use, what sand, what cement, what additives, to what ratio for each part of rendering. And then we're going to go in deep on how to mix it, the different options, and in my opinion, the best mix you can ever use. So what I'm going to do is quickly walk you through the idea behind the mix, why we use specific mixes, why we change the grade of sand. I'm going to walk you through the full process on how to get the perfect mix of rendering. So watch the video. Again, subscribe to our channel if you like it. And coming up, we've got loads of rendering. So I hope it helps. Let's crack on. Okay, I'm going to give a quick rundown on the different mixes you can be using in rendering. You've always got two coats in render. You've got your scratch coat and you've got your top coat. Your scratch coat is the first layer of render you apply, whether it be to brick, to block, to concrete. It really doesn't matter, but you've always got the scratch, and that's your first coat. And generally, I'm going to talk about exceptions towards the end of the video, but generally, the first part is for plastering sand. Now, plastering sand is one of the finest sands you can ever buy, and this is what you need in rendering, because when it comes to floating, when it comes to getting that finish, you need the fine grain sand. That's what's going to give you that smooth, lovely, perfect finish. So the scratch coat is 4 plastering sand mixed with 1 cement. When you hear anyone say 4:1, it just basically means 4 plastering sand, 1 cement. Again, you could look at using other sand, but I've only ever used plastering sand in my rendering. I've never used sharp, never used building. I've just used plastering sand and I've never had any issues. And to be honest, I find that the best way to go. So 4:1 scratch coat. Additives, always use waterproofers. You need waterproofers in your scratch coat because that's what's going to give you protection from the water, and it's going to give you that waterproofing you need for that building to be able to stay watertight, basically. So your scratch coat is the coat that takes the damage, and it's also the coat that's got the most amount of waterproofers in there, which prevents any damage happening to your building. So generally, what you'd want to do is apply a scratch coat one day, and then come back the next day to apply a top coat. It's not always possible, but that is the optimum way to do it. So when the scratch is still slightly damp, and then you apply a top coat the following day. That's 5 plastering sand. So here's the rule of thumb, and never ever get this wrong because you will have massive problems. The top coat always needs to be weaker than the scratch coat. Let me just expand a bit further. So top coat is 5 plastering sand, 1 cement. So it's the same amount of cement, but we've got 1 extra dose of plastering sand. This basically weakens the mix. And this needs to happen because if your top coat is stronger than the scratch, then it will crack. The scratch coat will crack the top coat, and it'll just cause infinite amount of damage, and it will fail. So basically, whenever you're doing a scratch, no matter whether you're using 4 plastering sand, 5 plastering sand, the top coat always needs to be 1 weaker. So in this instant, and this is probably the most used mix I use, the top coat is 5 plastering sand, 1 cement, and then we also add hydrated lime, and the additive I always use, which I'm going to talk about in detail in a bit, is Feb Render Mix. This is the additive I always use in my top coat, and it works a dream. So what I'm going to do now is show you some clips on how I mix my render, how it works. This is the premise behind the mixes. This is the idea of what sand to use, how the scratch compares to the top coat, and which additives you want to be using. So these are the differences. Maybe screenshot that, you can use that, take it with you. That's why I put this little presentation. But now I'm going to show you how I mix it, the tools I use, and specific ways to get the perfect mix in rendering. Let's crack on. Mixing. I do all my mixing in a big bath. This can get 2 mixes in. So I'm going to talk scratch coat. It's 4:1. It's 4:1. I'll add a tiny bit of SBR to make it stickier, only in the scratch coat. the red aspeata to the top coat. I'm putting this is integral waterproofers, and put this in the mix. Now what I do not drink this stuff. I don't know why anyone would. What I've done, this was a 500 milliliter can. I've cut it in half, giving me 250 milliliters. What I do is I add 250 milliliters of this to 1 bag of cement. So 2 mixes in, it'd be 250 ml each time. And that's how you gauge it. For each gauge, 4 to 1, be adding 250 milliliters of waterproof to the mix. So that's a quick gauge on how I mix it. I'm going to mix it up and I'm going to start whacking it on the walls. So the first one, scratch, 4 to 1, top coat, 5 to 1. Let's crack on. One way on how to mix it. I personally use a mixing bath, but a lot of renderers will use a cement mixer, and that, to be honest, is a great way of doing it because it keeps the mix circulated, it keeps the air within the mix, it keeps it fluffy. And here's a little clip on how the mix should look. You want it to be, the problem is when you're mixing as well sand cement, you don't want to keep throwing loads of water in, and I can't tell you the exact amount of water you need because it doesn't work like that. The sand might be wet, it might just be a damp condition. But generally, a cement mixer is a great way to do it, and just gently add little bits of water as you go until you've got that nice texture of it's got substance, but it's still a bit creamy and nice to put on. So that's that. Now let's talk about the top coat. We spoke about scratch coat. Let's talk about the top coat. So I always add hydrated lime to my mix, and that's because it gives the mix a bit of flexibility. And I live on the coast. I'm in Hastings, right near the sea. But I advise anyone to put hydrated lime in the mix because, one, it makes it flexible. It allows the top coat to move, to contract without it cracking. And the other reason is it makes for a great plasticizer. It's not actually a plasticizer, but when you're using it, it makes the mix creamy. It makes it nice to use. And when you're floating, it gets it really fluffy, and it's just lovely to bring back and make it easier to sponge. So definitely hydrated lime. And the second option is Feb render mix. This, a lot of renderers say they cancel each other out. The lime will cancel the waterproofers and the additives from the render mix. But I just find when they both use together, it makes for an amazingly creamy bit of render, and it's just lovely to work with. There is waterproofers in Feb render mix as well. So you've got the waterproofers in the base, and then you've got the waterproofing qualities in the top coat. But the Feb render mix is an all-in-one. So again, same process, 250 ml to 1 bag of cement. So if the top coat is 5 to 1, then you just put 250 milliliters of Feb render mix to the mix, and you mix it in the water beforehand and then mix it all together. In this clip, I've upgraded my drills, and I've now got a Mega Mixer MM30, so you get to see that bad boy in use as well. It's an amazing mixer. So let's crack on. I'll show you how to do that, and then we'll talk about one final thing. Got the bath out. We're going to give the Mega Mixer a proper go, so that'll be tested. It's going to be 5 to 1 mix. I've got 4 bags for this to get everything else filled. And we're also going to have half lime, so it's 5 to 1. This is mixed out, and we're going to have half lime. So it's 5 sand, 1 cement, half lime, and there's a bit of render mix in there. Hence why it looks like it's a bubble bath. So what we're going to do now is test this bad boy, see how it performs. I think it should be good. So yeah, first time. This is a Rafina Mega Mixer MM30. It's the That's the biggest one you can buy, so it's designed to be mixed in, backing blaster, render, and as you can see it just eats it up. Lovely drill, very very powerful. I've had to actually strap the GoPro to the head because I couldn't hold the GoPro and the drill at the same time. It is very very powerful, and it mixed it up in no time, as you can see. 2 gears, very simple, 1 trigger, easy to use. I highly recommend this mixer to anyone who's serious about plastering. And to be honest, it was nowhere near as expensive as your battery powered ones, and because I'm mainly domestic, I don't need to worry about generators or working on site. So for me, this mixer has turned out to be a bit of a beauty, and I'm sure I'll be doing videos with it in the future. The first go is definitely worth a try. Now the final part of this video, this isn't necessarily about the mix, but there is variables. For example, if you're working on brick, concrete blocks, then the 4:5 ratios is perfect. So 4 plastering sand for the scratch, 5 plastering sand for the top coat. But there are exceptions. For example, lightweight blocks. So if you've got thermalite blocks, for example, you don't want to be using that mix, because what you could find is that the mix is stronger than the substance of the blocks. So then that way, it'll crack the block, it'll be too strong. So if you are working on lightweight blocks, what you want is at least a 5:1 scratch coat, 6:1 top coat. And that way it just weakens the mix and it allows for the weaker substitute of the block, and it just prevents any damage going on. The other thing, thermalite blocks pull in extremely fast. So you want to add a lot of water to the block beforehand. And what I do is, I know it's not part of the mix, but it is crucial to know. I always add render mesh if I am rendering onto thermalite blocks. So I apply the scratch coat, put a thin layer, run the mesh into the render, and then build it in. And that way it just allows, it's an extra layer of protection. If there is any movements with the blocks, obviously the lightweight, they will move a little bit more than the render can take it. So that are the exceptions. Generally 4:1 scratch, 5:1 top coat is perfect. But if you're working on lightweight blocks, go down even lower again. So that is the best mix and all the advice I can give on the perfect mix for rendering. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button and please subscribe to our channel. We'd really appreciate it, because like I said, we've got lots of plastering videos, but we've also got lots of rendering videos coming up. So thank you so much for watching. I will see you on the next one, and feel free to leave any comments. Let us know what you think. Let us know what your opinion is on the perfect mix, and let us know what you're using. Thanks a lot. Cheers. See you in the next one.